Hi Founder fans, Jason here, and today's founder is Joseph Hewes, the chairman of the Marine Committee that built the Continental Navy. Now Joseph Hewes was originally from New Jersey, but he had relocated as a young man to North Carolina, where he became a self-made man, pulled himself up pretty much by his bootstraps, and by the age of 30, he had already made enough money to own a fleet of ships. As you might imagine, being a ship owner and a merchant, you were adversely affected by certain new tax laws coming out from Great Britain and Parliament. This made Joseph Hewes an ideal candidate to become a patriot during the American Revolution, and indeed he did. In fact, Joseph Hewes had already also been a member of the Colonial Assembly once things get a little tense. And North Carolina sends Joseph Hewes to the First Continental Congress, where he supports and signs the Articles of Association, also known as the Continental Association, which initiated a boycott on importing goods, which could really hurt a merchant's business. Hewes did this anyway. Don't worry, he found a reason to use his ships. A year later, in October of 1775, the Continental Congress, now at war, has established the Marine Committee, and Joseph Hewes is made chairman of the Marine Committee. The Marine Committee is supposed to figure out how to fight a war at sea. Now, Joseph Hewes has all these ships sitting around, and he donates his entire fleet of ships to the Continental Congress to be outfitted for war. And his ships literally make up a substantial portion of the basis of what would become the fairly small Continental Navy. Interestingly enough, another person on this committee is John Adams. And Hewes and John Adams, though they worked very well before this and after this, had a bit of a disagreement of who to make the Commodore in charge of this young Navy. Now, John Adams promoted Essex Hopkins. His argument was, we already have Washington from the South, we should have someone from the North leading the Navy. Well, Hewes thought, well, no, we should just have the best guy for the job. And Hewes' candidate was John Paul Jones. Now, in the end, they end up going with who John Adams wanted because, well, he did a pretty good job choosing Washington, and for various other political reasons, the Continental Congress went with John Adams' candidate and Essex Hopkins, which doesn't end great for Hopkins, though he did a pretty good job, but he was slandered in his own time to a large extent. Hewes' guy, John Paul Jones, well, that's a name you know. He ends up doing a lot of good stuff, especially around the waters of Britain. Now, this doesn't sour Hewes to the Revolution. In fact, Hewes is still there in 1776 when, not what you're thinking, before the Declaration of Independence, the Halifax Resolves were sent over. The Halifax Resolves were a series of decisions made by the North Carolina Assembly, essentially, and they sent these resolves to be presented to the Continental Congress, asking to declare independence. And Joseph Hewes, who was actually against independence at this point, followed the instructions his colony gave him and presented them. And these are the Halifax Resolves are one of several things that set the ball rolling towards the Declaration of Independence. Now, again, a few months later, when independence was to be declared, Hewes was really against the idea, but he had counsel with the other delegates in the Continental Congress, and he was swayed that there was really no other better option than to declare independence, and therefore, Joseph Hewes does vote for independence and does sign the Declaration of Independence. Yeah, I know it says built the Continental Navy next to me, but he was a signer of the Declaration, probably the highlight of his career. Unfortunately, Hewes, who had still a promising career ahead of him, does not follow through because he passes away fairly suddenly. Hewes was actually appointed to the committee meant to draft the Articles of Confederation. It would have been the third really important document he signed. Had he lived long enough, well, everything indicates he would have gone to the Constitutional Convention, though that's hearsay. I'm making that up because, unfortunately, Joseph Hewes gets sick and, as I said, passes away very quickly while still serving in the Continental Congress in 1779. So he doesn't even see the Articles of Confederation become ratified. He passes away in Philadelphia, far away from his home, and actually every delegate from the Continental Congress attends his funeral, and they officially vote to mourn his death for 1 month, which sounds kind of politicky, but only a handful of people ever got that honor, and Joseph Hewes certainly deserved it. He was a full-fledged, full-throttle patriot supporter of the cause. So that's Joseph Hewes. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, hit like. That way more people can learn about the American Revolution with us. And if you're new here, subscribe. I put out videos about the American Revolution 7 days a week. For example, I'll be back with another founder for you tomorrow.